Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.
Wow, look at this magical smoke, just like the magicians use. If perhaps from a more low-rent conjurer. Maybe that's harsh. Okay, today we're dealing with two visual novels from the same series, that are sold together as one game. The games are based on the Steve Jackson adventure book series, so already the game is showing one of its pros. It takes place in an arguably lesser-known fantasy universe, but at the same time a fairly recognizable and mildly dark one. So you'll encounter half-orcs and manticores, but also weirder fare like the Red Eyes. The Crown of Kings was stolen, an item of enough power to save the realm. If for some reason they only send out single champions one by one to go look for it, to trek across these two maps that I believe only make up the first 2 out of 4 games. And not only that, the king can only spare 24 gold pieces to fund your journey. Apparently your faction was a real glass cannon. You can make more than that in 1 day's worth of gambling in the halls of Vlada. So right off the bat, this game is about making a whole lot of choices. Which route to take, what actions to perform, what to buy, when to eat, when to sleep. And these decisions can increase or decrease your stamina and gold, or expend or earn new items to use. And sometimes they deliver impact surprisingly far down the road. For instance, getting a key in Sorcery 1 and using it in Sorcery 2. But being in position to get the key as well as use it are both missable. Make friends, fight, cast spells on occasion. Those are really fun, as each spell opportunity has a few possible applicable spells. And you don't always know how they will help, if they help. And some require the aforementioned items to be cast. So having these conditions align make you feel powerful. Spells can help you avoid a fight entirely or damage the enemy, can debuff them or buff you, and it's a lovely jolt when one of them is particularly potent. Fighting is fun as well. A strange, specific and kind of unique combat system. Turn-based, move the slider to determine your attack power, and if yours is higher than theirs, they get damaged. But if they choose to defend instead, their damage is minimized, and any excess power is wasted. So you have to try and suss out their intentions by reading the text and using some math skills. A sword-swinging sorcery savant's staple stat. For example, they already used this much power, and thus can't use more than what is left. And to double up on the math, Sorcery 2 has an optional, yet as mentioned, lucrative dice game called Swindlestones. I found it really fun, but please take that statement with a grain of salt. I was fairly taken with The Witcher 1's dice poker. This game, however, is far more unique. Both people roll a certain amount of dice. After rolling, each person says how many of one of the numbers 1 through 4 were rolled in total by the two of you, while keeping their dice hidden. If someone says the 1 3, then you can claim 1 4, or 2 or more of anything else. So 2 1s is worth more than 1 2, but 2 2s is worth more than 2 1s. And as you increase the minimum, the opponent has to match with the same amount of a higher value dice, or more with a lower value. You do this turn for turn, until someone calls when they believe their opponent is bluffing. If they were right, their opponent loses a dice. Otherwise, they lose one of their own. It's rare to have a gambling game where all opponents have equal odds, until they lose a round and have to desperately claw to stay in the game. Once you've lost all the dice, you lose. The game claims these are 4-sided dice. I don't know how well that would work in real life. So odds and logic are important, but so is bluffing. Because sometimes you just have a bad roll, and sometimes you can still win that way. For some reason, I feel that here the AI feels a bit more natural, in the sense than, say, you playing poker against the computer. Although I didn't really go through its behavior with a fine-toothed comb. Maybe we're playing around with simpler variables here and that helps. But honestly, why aren't we playing this in real life? It's a great game and it actually involves skill. Choices, magic, fighting, gambling. It's surprisingly action-packed for a visual novel. Not that difficult though, as the game has a rewind function. If you want to go back to a decision point, redo something, want to see different options play out, right a mistake, and there's no penalty for doing so, but in the sequel there's a mechanic where a large portion of time gets rewinded. It's a plot point. You keep information and items and use it to go down multiple paths and complete far removed objectives to ensure final true victory. And I believe those aren't infinite. And in encourage efficient questing, raise the stakes a bit, get to see a whole lot more of the game this way, decreases the need to replay it, to some of our delight. In the first one though, you'd be much less inclined on rewinding large portions of time. The narrative branches or seems to branch too many times, so unless your ending is catastrophic, you may be more inclined to line the bed you made. The descriptions are good and work well with your imagination, but it's still a lofty visual novel with a lot of reading, and some of the more exciting, dangerous choices may make you antsy during the more descriptive scene-setting ones. Yes, I'm sure you're crafting a lovely world using words alone, but I'm kind of anxious to find out whether or not I survive this. But how is the story? It's okay. A fairly dark, scummy, recognizable fantasy world that makes you focus more on the smaller interactions than the quest as a whole. Smaller scenarios that are fun to overcome. Short bursts of adrenaline delivered via digitized ink. But some characters can be intriguing and the writing isn't bad. The game takes you through both the macro and the micro of a quest, helping strangers while traveling, or robbing them on a long journey. One long enough that the end goal is often out of your mind, especially since you're only going to be halfway done by the end of this game. Medieval fantasy hitchhiking. Some of the plot point and character connections can sometimes be rather coincidental though. The sound design is good, ensures your imagination doesn't have to do all the legwork. This place is busy. This place is wet. Your heart's beating, so it's somewhere scary. That one isn't as effective, but when you're engrossed by the text, they bolster your mental image. Although I suppose there aren't that many unique cues, and at least some of them will repeat. Last up, the visuals. They're mostly good in my opinion. Sometimes you'll see hand-drawn sketches, black and white, and the maps are colored in and they seem to have a mild 3D effect. Reminds me of something a general would use the shuffleboard stick to move plastic tanks on. During combat and gambling you see sketches again. They're pretty good if your character design is quite generic, but sometimes the odd picture that accompanies some of the text can look bad. Grungy. Is this a manticore or a Persian cat? The designs look dated, but in a bad way. Maybe Brothers Grimm-esque. Maybe I'm being harsh, but there's something unpleasant about most of them to me. Like an old discolored textbook. But in all fairness, I wouldn't be surprised if these sketches were lifted directly from the original books. It probably would have been a bit extreme to draw new ones. And those 3D maps are quite good. Gives a sense of place, probably because it literally tracks your journey. Both games took me 14 hours in total to complete, and it is cheap on Steam, 95 Rand full price, 23 Rand 75 on sale. That's 1 Rand 70 per hour of gameplay, which is quite good. And if you're more inclined towards mobile gaming, cheaper alternatives are available, at least in terms of the full price. And it has quite a small download size as it only takes up 404 megabytes on the hard drive, and it works seemingly without incident on the Warhorse. It is a visual novel after all. Not even the magic animation trips it up too much. Stereotypically, the game is okay for some kids. Graphic descriptions of violence, fighting, plus in the second game there's a slavers guild, there's some fantasy race talk, and there may be other objectionable things too. For instance, I'm not sure this is the best way to depict headhunters, kind of like cartoony villains. Chirruping. Plus, I'm not sure, but I think that animal pelt comes from a different continent. I do believe some of the other features are correct, and since they're fantasy headhunters, maybe actual headhunters can be used as an inspiration, and maybe ultimately this is fine, and everything is text, a few pictures, and the pictures rarely show the violence. The game has a lot of choices to make with rewarding and punishing outcomes, many branching paths, and some impacts have surprisingly lasting relevance. It's really fun when you make good choices, when the outcomes are overwhelmingly positive. You're smashing life, I believe sometimes by actually smashing things. The fighting, dice and magic mechanics add some nice spice to the affair, fun of the mathematical and logical kind. The game has great descriptions and good sound design to stoke the imagination. imagination. Not many unique sounds though, but they make the journey absorbing, and the visuals are mostly good. Sure, it's mostly text, but the map is great. Like a board game. Lovely. It has some nice character designs too, in black and white, but these drawings do tend to have an unpleasantness about them. On the maybe side, this is a visual novel with really dense text. That's what they tend to be, I believe, and that's what a lot of people tend to like. No voiceovers here either, so you have to read. But what some people who like that kind of visual novel might not like about this game are the action elements I mentioned. I found them to be welcome distractions from the reading, but not everyone will agree. I bought this game to read, not use basic math, and sometimes the more perilous sections can really divert your focus from the descriptions and text. And story-wise, you really focus more on succeeding from incident to incident, rather than the plot as a whole. And some of the occurrences can be quite coincidental, getting just the right reward maybe. Arguably, these elements make the game more fun, but perhaps once again, in a way the genre usually isn't, as they may hamper the story. But if nothing else, it makes the game a bit more unique. The world building can go a bit generic fantasy at times, or at least feel this way because its source material used the older style, but it's engrossing and gritty, written well enough. Plus, as said, it also describes some weirder fare, some intriguing characters. In Sorcery Part 2, the rewinding of large portions of time lets you see a whole lot more of that game without actually replaying it, which is really nice for people like me who probably wouldn't have. Plus, it can make it feel more like a detective game, because now you have the inside track. And it gives you the opportunity to search out where the other objectives are. But in general, the rewind function, especially on Sorcery Part 1, that only has the standard rewind, can act more as a way of erasing your mistakes. There's nothing punishing you from using it, so the consequences of bad choices will only remain if you're disciplined. And ultimately, I feel like this game kind of discourages you from replaying it, and you're buying Sorcery 1 plus 2. 3 and 4 are sold separately, meaning we end halfway through the quest. In some ways that's fair enough, it's a long journey, and I'm sure there are reasons for the pricing. The value for money so far is good, it's just a little annoying. I mean, the individual sequels almost cost as much as 1 and 2 together, but once again, I guess it's fair enough. Come on, play it, and see how 3-letter combos correspond to spells, in a cute and somewhat logical way. Hot shoots fire, zap shoots lightning, doze causes sleep or a slowdown effect, but wait, walk as a shield? Yeah, I totally buy that came to your mind before BUC for Buckler. A likely story. Although in all fairness, how many situations would call for a frying spell?
Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.